What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. I'm back with yet another scheduled preview and record prediction video. Today we're going to be going through the 2020 North Carolina Tar Heels. So North Carolina is a team that a lot of people are really high on. A lot of people think North Carolina is going to be really good, myself included, because when you look at North Carolina last year, they were in so many one-possession games. The majority of their games, I think like 10 of their 12 games, were one-possession games. They were really a better team than what their record showed, because if they could have pulled out some of those close one-possession games, their record would have shown them a much better team. And when you look at what they're returning, Sam Howell at quarterback, of course you got guys like Antoine Green out there at wide receiver, some defensive guys coming back. And I think the most important thing, along with Sam Howell, is pretty much their entire offensive line is coming back. So let's see if North Carolina could give Clemson a run for their money in the ACC championship game, or if North Carolina is going to disappoint like they did last year. So here is their schedule. I think the front half of the season is definitely more difficult than the back half of the season. We'll get into that to a little bit, as I mentioned down there. 2019 record was 7-6, 6-6 in the regular season. Again, so many close one-possession games that they lost, but they killed Temple in their bowl game. And then when you look up there, their home games are going to be in that baby blue. Their away games are going to be in the navy blue. And then they have a neutral site game. And as always, it's going to be in black. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Let's dive right on into their schedule. We're going to start at the top as usual. First game of the season, probably going to end up being a Friday night primetime game against the University of Central Florida, or UCF. This game, this is going to be a great game to watch. I can already feel it, especially if UCF gets Mackenzie Milton back at quarterback. This game is going to be absolutely outstanding to watch. The Friday night game, under the lights in Spectrum Stadium. That's the Golden Knights Stadium. This game really is a 50-50 game for me. I think if UCF can get Mackenzie Milton back, then UCF has a better shot. But if they don't, then I think North Carolina has a better shot. But averaging them out, I'm counting on Central Florida to get Mackenzie Milton back. So I am going to lean towards the Golden Knights in this game. I think UCF was overlooked a lot last year. And I think UCF could possibly get back on top of the Group of Five Mountain this year. I'm going to lean towards the Golden Knights. I'm not going to be surprised if North Carolina wins the game, though. It really is 50-50 for me. Then their next game, it's the neutral site game. It's going to be in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, against the Auburn Tigers. I am really high on both of these teams. I already mentioned I was high on North Carolina, but Auburn's a team that I'm looking forward to watch as well. Auburn's returning a lot on the offensive side, just like North Carolina is. Of course, Auburn returning Bo Nix at quarterback. Old news that I just read about not too long ago. Jatarvius Whitlow is in the transfer portal, but he has not transferred anywhere, so I'm going to act like he is staying at Auburn. Then, of course, Seth Williams, the young wide receiver out there for Auburn as well. I think this game is going to be really fun to watch, especially since it's a neutral site game. Both teams are going to have fans in the stadium. It's going to be a great atmosphere to watch. I'm leaning towards the Tigers in this one because I think both teams' offenses are really good. I think Auburn has a slightly better offense, but I also think Auburn has the slightly better defense. So I think Auburn just barely is the slightly better team, and I think Auburn is going to be a little more hungry than North Carolina is this season. So I'm going to go ahead and give the early one here to the Tigers. Again, just like the UCF game, not going to be surprised if North Carolina ends up winning it. I definitely think it'll be a close game. Then North Carolina gets their first home game of the season. It's going to be against James Madison, and I'm not going to talk about this one any longer. North Carolina should have no trouble with James Madison. Tar Heels easy. Then they get another home game, week 4, against Georgia Tech. Again, they shouldn't have any trouble with this one. I think Georgia Tech's going to get better this year. I don't think Georgia Tech is going to get into the top half of the ACC, but Georgia Tech is going to be a slightly better team, but they're not going to be as good as North Carolina will be this season. Give me the Tar Heels. Then they have a road game against Virginia. So, of course, Virginia, runner-up in the ACC last year. They're getting Bryce Perkins back. I think Virginia is going to be a very solid team next year. I don't think they're going to be an elite team next year. because when you look at who is surrounding Bryce Perkins, it's not all that great. When you look at who is surrounding Sam Howell, it's pretty good, especially in the offensive line. The offensive line for North Carolina is better than the offensive line for Virginia. I think both defenses are pretty evenly matched, but when you look at the offensive side, it's no contest. North Carolina clearly has the better offense, and I think that's why they're going to win this game. Then they get a home game against Virginia Tech. So the Hokies are a team that I barely ranked in my top 25 poll. If you remember, I had them at number 25. Virginia Tech, of course, returning Hendon Hooker at quarterback. And then, of course, Trey Turner at wide receiver. Going to be probably one of the better quarterback-wide receiver one of the best quarterback-wide receiver duos in the ACC. Both guys have talent, but then again, when you look at the talent surrounding North Carolina and Sam Howell, it's just better. And then when you compare the coaches, of course, Frank Beamer, not at Virginia Tech anymore, I think that North Carolina and Mac Brown, he's just a better coach. I think Virginia Tech's just going to get out-coached in this game. This game, to me, is probably going to decide that division for the ACC. I know it's early, only in week 6, but I think it's probably going to decide the division. That game and the Virginia game. Of course, you have Virginia Tech who have to play final week of the season, but I think North Carolina really gets to dictate where they stand in the ACC race early in the season. Then you have another road game. This one's going to be against Duke. Duke was good a couple years ago, and ever since then, Duke hasn't really been all that great. I don't see Duke being that great this year either. I think Duke is going to improve a little bit. The recruiting class is a little bit above what Duke football fans are used to, so they're getting a little more talent, but I don't think Duke has the talent to match up with North Carolina. I don't see Duke beating North Carolina in this game at all. I like the Tar Heels. All right, this next game is interesting. Week 8, they're going to get to play Miami, but it's on the road. So, of course, Miami bringing in transfer quarterback Derek King from Houston. I think both quarterbacks are really, really good. Of course, Derek King, pretty good. Didn't really play a lot last season for Houston. Still a good quarterback nonetheless. Sam Howell, also probably going to be maybe the second best quarterback behind Trevor Lawrence in the ACC this year. Absolutely outstanding numbers for Sam Howell last year. This game is going to be really interesting and really fun to watch. It is a road game for the Tar Heels, and I think this is a possible trap game for North Carolina because I don't think we all know how good Miami's going to be. When you look at just the sheer talent surrounding each quarterback, the talent surrounding Derek King is pretty good. It's nothing special. But then when you look at the talent surrounding Sam Howell, it's better. It's better than what Derek King has. Sam Howell just has more weapons around him. I think North Carolina is going to pull out this game. I think it's going to be close. I think it really is going to be close, but I'm giving the Tar Heels the win here. Then they have their bye week. In terms of scheduling, this is an okay place for a bye week. But I think this is a fairly decent spot for a bye week. It's after a tough road game at Miami, which is going to be nice. I think you have your toughest games behind you. All the games that you have the potential to lose are out of the way, and if you get through it here, bye week is a perfect place for you to just relax. Think about getting through these last 4 games and finishing out the season strong. So the game after the bye week, they should have no problem with. It's a home game against Uconn. Of course, Uconn getting out of the American Athletic, going to go play in the Big East Conference in sports like basketball and all the other sports. But for football, they're going to be classified as an FBS independent team, and I don't see any way that Uconn can beat North Carolina. There's just too much talent for North Carolina, not enough talent for Uconn Tar Heels. Then it's going to be a home game against Pitt. As I've mentioned in other schedule previews and record prediction videos, Pitt is a very good team. I think Pitt's a better team. A lot of people give them credit for. I think Pitt's a pretty average team. But they're a little bit above average in my opinion. When you look at the talent they have, it's not that great, but it's also not that bad. It's pretty good talent at the University of Pittsburgh. I think North Carolina has more talent, and they're playing the game at home. North Carolina wins this one. Then their final road game of the season, it's going to be against Boston College. The Eagles have been pretty decent the past couple years, and now they just lost A.J. Dillon to the draft. I think Boston College is going to have a down year this year, and I don't see any way that they can beat North Carolina. I'm going to take the Tar Heels in this one as well. Then the final game of the season, of course, North Carolina State, the rivalry game. This game has been very close in the past couple of years, and there have been years where North Carolina State has had an up year, and then North Carolina's had an up year. This year, it's North Carolina's turn to have the up year, and I don't see any way that they can lose to their rival in North Carolina State. I just don't see it. I don't think it'll happen. North Carolina's got too much talent. I like the Tar Heels in the final game of the season. All right, so with everything being said and considered, I have the Tar Heels going 10-2. So, of course, the two most likely losses here would be to UCF and Auburn. That's just my opinion. North Carolina's out-of-conference schedule is fairly difficult. Of course, you have James Madison and Uconn, but if you throw those two games out, they have one of the more difficult non-conference schedules in all college football among Power 5 teams. So they have to play UCF and Auburn. So the reason I have them at 10-2 is because, again, I'm leaning towards UCF and Auburn in those games. I'm not going to be surprised if North Carolina wins any of those two games, but I am favoring them. And I think chances are that they probably win one of those games, especially if UCF doesn't get Mackenzie Milton back. But then I think they're bound to lose another game somewhere. The ACC is going to get more competitive this year, so they might lose on the road to Virginia or maybe Virginia Tech or on the road to Miami, which I think is very plausible. So 10-2 is my overall prediction. All right, so now let's look at the record range. What this is I take this team's worst case scenario and the team's best case scenario. Worst case scenario for the Tar Heels, in my opinion, is 7-5. To me, those 5 losses are to UCF, Auburn, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Miami. I was very close to putting their worst case scenario at 6-6. I think the only way that they can end up 7-5 is if, again, they do what they did last year and just are in so many close one-possession games and then they just lose them. Even a lot of their wins last year were close one-possession games. They didn't have a lot of blowout wins or blowout losses. They were all very close games. Even the game against Clemson, they only lost by 1 point last year. It helps they don't have to play Clemson this year. With the ACC is only going to get better. So worst case scenario I have for them is 7-5. All right, now best case scenario I have for them is 12-0. So the reason I was very close to putting them at 11-1, but the reason I have them at 12-0 is because, as I said before, if UCF doesn't get Mackenzie Milton back, very good chance North Carolina is going to win that game. If Jatavius Whitlow ends up transferring out of Auburn and going somewhere, I think North Carolina has a way better shot at that game. And then if they get through those first 2 games of the season, there's really not another game that stands out to you. Of course, Virginia Tech, but they get them at home. Of course, Miami when they get them on the road, but we don't know how good Miami's going to be, and I don't think people expect Miami to be that great anyway. So if they get through those first 2 games of the season, they should have a pretty easy shot at going 12-0, in my opinion. There are going to be some bumps in the road, but first 2 games of the season, they can get past them. I see no reason why the Tar Heels don't go 12-0. But to reiterate, my prediction for the Tar Heels is 10-2. So that's going to do it for my schedule preview and record prediction for the 2020 North Carolina Tar Heels. Quick heads up, in 4 days, that's on Memorial Day, I'm going to be live streaming right here on YouTube, 7:30 or 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to be predicting Army, Navy, and Air Force, the Armed Forces schedules, as a little Memorial Day special. You guys don't want to miss it. I think it's going to be really fun. I hope you guys can check it out. So now with that out of the way, if you guys enjoyed, please do leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you're brand new to the channel or just enjoy the content that I put out. And if you haven't done so already, please leave a comment down below. What are your thoughts on North Carolina this year? I think North Carolina, as I've stated so many times in this video, is going to be really good. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I read through every single comment, and it means a lot when you guys give me feedback, comment on my stuff. And as always, until next time, play hard but tailgate harder. I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.